Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie. I'm a book-loving, notebook-hoarding reader and writer on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. And this is the Get Literate podcast. On this podcast, we explore the power of leading literate lives. We talk all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to make our lives better. And no matter what better means to you, the pages inside books and notebooks can help us get there. So, each week, we'll mix together books, notebooks, mindful practices, and creativity to cultivate a life we love. Now, grab a notebook and your TBR list, and let's get literate. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Get Literate podcast. I am thrilled to introduce you to today's guest. She has been an inspiration in my own notebooking and journaling life for quite some time. And while I tend to be rather linear and boring and productive in my notebook, I have loved how today's guest is more creative and colorful and curious in her journal pages, which is something that I am always trying to do more of. So everyone, I am thrilled to welcome Christie Zimmer to the podcast today. Welcome, Christie. So glad to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, me too. Me too. It's been a highlight on my calendar for a little while. So to give readers a little bit of background, and some of them might even remember when I first shared the very first printable page that I found of yours in my community. I first found you when I saw this beautiful, creative, colorful, spacious letter A on the page. And with that letter A, some really lovely thematic words that start with A that encouraged journalers, notebookers to think about their lives in a different way. It wasn't your traditional notebooking page. It wasn't, a specific journaling prompt. It was this really creative way of thinking outside of the box. Now, I love picking a word of the year, right? The intention. I actually pick one for every month because I just can't seem to stick to one for the entire year. And so when I saw that page, it just checked all the boxes for me. It had the thematic words, it had the color, it had the creativity I needed. And it was a little bit outside of the box. And since I love books and reading and writing, the alphabet theme just had me at hello. So that was the very first page that I first saw of yours. You're all the way up to letter U now on your website. So you definitely have more pages, which I have so enjoyed. But I truly admire your style of journaling. I admire how creative it is and how you let me be creative without having to do any work. I just get to borrow it from you. So let me turn it over to you. How about you go ahead, introduce yourself to listeners and let us know a little bit more about you and your journaling.
Oh, great! Thanks. It's wonderful to hear that you found me at the alphabet inspired journal pages, and I think they really embody a really important aspect of my own journaling, which is that I'm always trying to kind of push the boundaries of what journaling can be, of how we can explore in our journals and what we can discover in our journals. And so one of the rules I started off with when I created those alphabet inspired journal pages was to try to develop prompts that I've never used before, using words that I either don't use very often or haven't used before. And I've tried to follow that through with the whole alphabet. So I kind of jumped ahead there, but yes, my name is Christie Zimmer. I am first and foremost a journaler, a lifelong journaler. And I share a lot of my approach to journaling on the internet in the form of blog posts and a newsletter and printable digital journal pages that people can. I have a huge selection on my website. People can download pages, and then there are pages for purchase as well. And just to really share my all abiding love for journaling and for the kind of exploration and self-discovery that can happen in your journal, the kind of um, growth and development that can happen in your journal. I really see journaling as a tool. I think it might be hard to tell from my pages because they really are colorful and outside the box, but you know, at the core of everything I do is the idea of reflection, of self-reflection, and then also the role that reflection plays in learning. So that creeps into, I hope, every single journal page that I make. And I know when we talked before, you were going to, you know, you wanted to know about my own journal story. So I don't know if that's a good, if this is a good
Please,
time.
please. Yes, do.
Okay.
And actually, I'll interrupt you though and just say,
Yeah.
I feel like, and this is why I admire your work so much, is that it is colorful and creative, but every single page has such intention. And that's why I love it. You've managed to do both in these
Oh,
pages.
thank you.
That's a pretty big feat, right? You know, I kind of joke, like, I feel like we're very similar notebookers in the fact of we use our notebooks for the same reason. We have a lot of similar prompts that we bring to the notebook, except
Yeah.
I'm that right side of the brain, just put it all on the line paper, and you've managed to add the left side of the brain to it, which is admirable.
Well, and that's, I mean, that's purpose and intention is the whole, is really, and that's the work that we do in our journal, right? And my very favorite definition of reflection is thinking with a purpose. That's what reflection is, right? And there's a lot to that. There's so many directions you can go. There's so much you can get out of that. But at its core, at the beginning, that's what it is. And so that's how I approach, for sure, my own journaling, in my own notebooks and in my own pages, and then also for sure in the prompts that I share on my website.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is clear. But I interrupted you, so now tell us
No,
this.
I just think so. I am a lifelong journaler, as I've always journaled, and the format of journaling, of putting thoughts into words, has always just been just felt like home to me. It's how I think. And that's because I know why. It's because I have I think a pretty harshly critical inner voice. I have a tough inner critic. And so in journaling, in my journal, I'm able to connect with another part of myself, with another voice, a more supportive, a more encouraging, a more action-oriented voice. And so in many ways, growing up, and still now, you know, when I'm struggling, journaling has really been a lifeline for me, a place to, it's been a way to find perspective. You know, when you feel pessimistic about things, it's a wonderful way to find perspective. In your journal, you can explore you can explore an issue from so many different perspectives, that it can be really helpful that way to get you out of kind of a negative mindset. And my journal voice is funny and encouraging, and always wants to know, okay, what's the next step? What can we do next? So that's really been, so I've really built my journal practice around that, around accessing that, you know, kinder, gentler part of myself that really encourages me to continue to move forward, and that sees setbacks and failures, because they happen to all of us, as opportunities to learn, as data gathering, you know, to help you move forward. So what did I learn now? What can I take with me? What's my takeaway? A good positive takeaway from, you know, a negative experience that I can take into the next experience. And when I really started looking in more than a decade now, I really started looking into reflection, into the writings about reflection, and some of the theory around reflection. And that really gave me a framework for, it really helped me understand the parts of journaling, that why journaling works so well for me, because that's the process of reflection. Reflection is all about learning from experience, and it gave me a framework to really build my journal around and take it to the next level and make sure that it is really purpose driven, and really positive and really supportive and encouraging. I have a really friendly, I think of my journal in a super friendly way, you know, the kind of, if you haven't journaled in a while, you know how you have friends that you haven't spoken to in a while, but then when you see them again, you can just pick right back
Yes.
up where you left off. You know,
Yes.
that's a journal. So there's no judgment there. There's no guilt there. You can be fully yourself in your journal, and you can move forward as yourself, and discover what works best for you. You can kind of let go of what you should be doing and figure out what you could be doing, in your
Oh, I
journal. It's
love
a
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is my absolute favorite topic for discussion, and I just have so many good things to say about it, and I feel so, I there's so much joy in sharing, what I'm learning as I go, and I am a learner. I am still learning about this myself.
Yeah. Oh, there are so many things I want to say. First of all, your enthusiasm is contagious, right? Like you're talking to someone who loves to notebook and journal, and I'm feeling the energy just kind of radiating off of you, which is so exciting. But one thing you said early when you first started talking that made me think about the ways that my journal is really showing up for me now is it's
Yeah.
almost like a meditative experience, right? I'm a terrible meditator. I cannot sit still. I know that I'm supposed to let the thoughts in and then watch them go, and I am just not good at that. But I feel like my journal acts as that. I can
Yeah.
put them on the paper, I can step away, I can get the perspective, I can feel better, and I can move on. And I was really struck by that theme in your own journaling story, which is that
Yeah.
purpose, that intention of what journaling can really do for us. And last
Mhm.
week on the podcast, I talked about all of the health benefits that are
Yeah.
associated with a regular writing practice. And as
Mhm.
you're speaking, it's just all just kind of has this beautiful snowball effect of what could happen and how we feel and all of those possibilities with just a piece of paper and a
Yeah.
pencil and some
Yeah.
printables.
Yeah.
I
And
love it.
you too, right? It's really a
Right.
celebration of you. When sometimes that's hard to come by. Sometimes
Yeah.
you can be discouraged, or not quite sure how to move, what the next step should be. And putting ideas in writing is a great way to kind of show you the possibilities. I find, the
Yes.
whole idea of the problem well stated is half solved. When you start to write about what's happening, when you start to write about an experience, let's say, a good experience or a negative, both, any kind of experience, um, when you capture those details, there are insights in those details. There are ahas in those details. There may be things that you remember about the experience that you didn't catch at the time when it was happening. There may be themes or patterns that emerge out of your experiences that you can capture when you write them down. Um, so that's like, so yes. I think there are so many benefits, and when you talked about, meditating and taking a step back, in some of the readings I've done, I've seen reflection talked about as, slowing down the learning. It's kind
Mhm.
of just like you said, when you take a moment to reflect, it kind of slows up, puts everything in slow mo for a minute. You can take a step back, and you can really think about and process what happened, and that again, that's the reflective aspect. So it's more than just capturing events and experiences as you experience them. It's also making sense of them, right? And what we do in our journal, a lot of what we do in our journals is making sense, and you get to decide that. It's you who's making sense of it, so you get to decide what's meaningful to you in that experience,
Mhm.
right? So it puts you in control, of your own experiences and of what's happening. And then the final step of reflection is action, right? It's very action oriented. So then once you figured out what your experience means to you, then you get to say, okay, what am I going to do with that information? What am I going to do next time? What am I going to bring with me next time to my experience that I've learned from this one? And so that also gives you a sense of control as well, that you're going to go out. I love, another thing I read too is you're going to go out and happen to things instead of things happening to you when you have
Oh,
that
another
reflection
one. I need to
behind
write
you,
that one down too.
right?
I love it. I love that one. Yeah. And,
I
coming
can't.
out of the pandemic and coming out of 2020 and 2021 and 2022, the more control that we can feel, the better. And being able to have that control, even if it's just on the page, does make you feel, it makes you feel better. It makes you feel like you can move forward from something, that you felt stuck in. And I love what you just said about the action part, because I'm a big morning page person. I love Julia Cameron. I get up every morning, like 4:30, 5 o'clock. I've got my coffee. I'm in my morning pages. And one of the things that I found though early on, week after week in the beginning, was that those morning pages were very negative. Like I was just using them as a brain dump of every possible thing that could have been bothering me or going wrong. And after a couple of weeks of that, I realized, okay, my notebook can be more than this. I don't have to leave it on the page just like that. I can take it a step further. And that's where I love some of the prompts that you provide, because I need some of that guidance sometime to know where to go next, whether it's those fun alphabet pages or some of the other ones. I also love your emergency journal pages, but
Oh, me
those,
too.
yeah, those just really help in thinking, okay, what could I do with my notebook, and how do I keep pushing the practice along? And those prompts were really helpful for me, and turning the morning pages routine into a negative Nelly session into, okay, so what the heck are we going to do about this? Because I could see it on the page, and where do we go from there? So I love that you mentioned action being that next step. It's not just notebooking. It's not just journaling. It's a
Yeah.
catalyst for what you could do with your whole life.
Yeah, it is a tool. And as a tool, it needs to be useful, right? Our journals should be useful. So that's my argument too for developing, making sure that your journal practice works for you. They're just like you said, right? Like, so if there's an aspect of journaling that you want to pursue, like the morning pages, like being able to do that in a really productive way, then experimenting like you have,
Yeah.
and kind of working through it until you find the practice that, or the technique that works in your journal practice for you, is a huge part, I think, of journaling, is a huge part of how to make sure that that tool is useful for you. I know there are parts of, when we look at our experiences and we look at ourselves, it can be uncomfortable, right?
Oh yeah.
When we explore things that didn't go well, when we explore failures, that can be really uncomfortable. So for me, it's really important to have a journal practice that supports you and encourages you. So to keep the parts of journaling that work for you, and don't worry about get rid of the parts that don't work for you, that don't feel good, that don't feel useful to you. I say this all the time, there are no rules with journaling, right? Whatever works for you is the rule for you.
Yeah. We have to find our own path, our own way with it, which is a perfect segue actually to talk about the different kinds of printable pages that you have on your website. You have those beautiful alphabet pages. I already mentioned the emergency pages. I love the one thing pages, and my newest obsession that now I will have is the printable, the calendar, the one little thing everyday
Yep.
calendars. I'm a sucker for a good calendar and a daily practice. So that's
Yep.
going on my next. So I guess I would love for you to talk more about the different kinds of
Okay.
guided journals and journaling pages that you have, so that listeners can kind of connect with one that they think might be a next best move for their notebooks.
So part of I do have a very wide variety
You
of journal
do. You
pages that I
do.
offer. Part of that tracks my own development in journaling. my own understanding of how journaling works and my own kind of ever broadening exploration of what journaling can be. So there's a little bit of evolution there, which I think is really helpful. So some of my earlier pages might benefit new journalers, and some of my more recent pages might benefit journalers who are a little further along, or who are just looking for some new, who are like, who adore journaling and are very involved in journaling, and maybe just looking for a different avenue or some different inspiration for their own journals. Some of my earliest pages were the 10-minute journal pages. I have
Yes.
a huge section of those. So 10 minutes to reflect on your day, 10 minutes to highlight your day,
Yeah.
10 minutes to let your mind wander, which
I
is,
liked the reverse engineer. That's one of my favorites. The reverse engineer your day was one of my favorites.
I love those. That came from, that also came, like, so that came from a bit of academic reading as well. I was looking at, it was from a story, or a paper about curriculum development, and starting with what you want your end point to be, and then working your curriculum back to make sure that
Yes.
it gets you there, right?
Yeah.
So I thought, what if we do that with our days? What if we start at the end of our day? How do I want to feel at the end of my day? And
Yeah.
then work backwards. What steps can I take to get there? Like, what can I, so now it's the morning. What can I do now to make sure that or to help, to encourage me to be there at the end of the day? So the 10-minute pages, what I wanted to accomplish with those was the idea that it doesn't have to be, you don't have to sit down and spend an hour journaling.
Right.
That it can be in little snippets of observation. That insight can come from little observations about your day. My journaling is point form. Very often it's in point form, and it's in lists, and it's in snippets.
I
um,
love
I
this. I'm so excited to hear you say that. Yes.
Yeah, because I feel like that's what, well, first of all, that's what works for me.
Right.
um,
Right.
that I have it with me all the time, and I kind of dive in there when I need it. It's there for me when I need it. And so I'll dive in with just little thoughts here and there as I have them, as a way to capture them. And I'll dive in with I do a lot of problem solving in my journal. So I'll dive in when I have a little problem and try and work it out. And so I wanted people, so with the 10-minute pages, to realize that there doesn't need to be a lot of setup. You don't have to, you can just dive in. You can just dive in and spend 10 minutes and see what happens. And at the very least, you've captured some details about your day, that are recorded, that you can look back on. Kind of the fun of the 10-minute journal pages is you could do the same. I have many of the 10-minute pages, but you can do the same one, let's say 5 days in a row, and then look at them together. What sort of patterns emerge? What are the things you talk about? What are the things that you find are important in your day over and over again?
Yeah.
What are the things you enjoy over and over again? How can you make more room for those things?
Yes.
So and then the prompts you talked about, those two. Some of my very earliest pages were printable prompts. So it's one big prompt on a page. So things like, one of my favorites from that collection is 3 little things about today that mean a lot. So
Yeah.
little things that mean a lot. And you can find it's incredible when you go looking in your day what
Yeah.
you can find,
Yeah.
when you have a good sense of what matters to you, when you really look at, I think sometimes we don't spend time doing this. When you look at your day and you figure out, what are the parts that really matter to me? What are the parts that light me up, or that make me feel good about what I'm doing, or that feel meaningful, that feel productive? What are those things? When they're top of mind, those are things then that you can pour your energy into tomorrow and the next day.
Yeah.
So I love that kind of exploration of, for sure, the 10-minute pages and the printable prompts are about today, about right now. What are we doing, instead of, I wish I could, or I think I could? What are you doing right now? Let's start with what you're doing now, figure out what's great about that, and then figure out how to expand that, or to continue to do that, or to even just recognize, that part of my day makes me really happy, and I'm glad for that, and I'm
Yeah.
grateful for that.
Yeah. Your pages, I mean, they're printable pages. They're for notebooks, they're for journaling, but honestly, there's a whole lot of life coaching in those pages. Walking through that process. It really is. It may seem like on the surface as we're talking about it, this 10-minute prompt, but gosh, it really can be a game changer for the way that we think and the way that we live.
It's just, and it's really what I'm like, again, as a journaler, first and foremost, these are the things that I'm learning that make a difference in my journaling, and that I think are really supported by the theory, by, reflective theory as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I think, that's what I try and do in my pages, is bring a little bit of the theory to it, but mostly make the journaling super accessible, really positive, lighthearted.
Mm-hmm.
Small doses is like I said, journaling can be uncomfortable. There are parts that can be uncomfortable. And one of the ways that I manage that in my own journaling is just approach it a little bit at a time, kind of in manageable chunks.
Yes. Yeah, that's the only way we really get things done, right? Without being overwhelmed. And you mentioned your website. This will sound silly, but honestly, your website is my happy place. It is
Oh, thank you.
beautiful. It's this beautiful gleaming white background and then just color and writing and journal pages. Yeah, whenever I need a pick me up, I just start scrolling through any of the pages
Oh,
and I never leave without something that I can start jotting down uh to brighten up my day. You've got so much goodness on there.
those are all, so every photograph on there are pictures that I've taken in my office space. It's all so I think too, like the reason, and the reason I do that is because to show people that anyone can do this. you know
Yeah.
that as a one person show here, a one person journal factory.
Yes.
It's really doable. Journaling, kind of developing a regular journal habit that's really joyful and really expansive, is absolutely doable, and that we can all. It's something that we can all do. And my goal is really to just put as many ideas out there as possible, hoping to inspire people and journalers, and people who want to journal, and take what works for you. And I hope what you'll do is use those to develop your own journal practice and your own uh, practice that works for you.
Yeah. Well, there is one thing on your website because
Okay.
you mentioned being a one-woman show, and one
Yeah.
thing on your website that is sold out, that when it is not sold out, I will be the very first person in your cart, are those beautiful miniature little guided journals with those envelopes that look like book
Oh,
pages. Oh my goodness, I'm not doing the explanation any justice, but they're beautiful and miniature. And I'm hoping you have plans to make a few more of those because I will be the first person coming back to get them. I love all things mini. I love them. I don't know what episode number it was, but I got to talk with Deborah Glanz, who is a paper crafter, and she makes these miniature notebooks and these miniature things. And I was smitten with all things miniature notebooks. And so when I saw those on your website, I thought, okay, I have to keep bookmarking this to come back and see when they're back.
oh
But
no.
they're beautiful. I
Oh,
love
thank you. It again is just pushing the boundaries, and sometimes with a digital format, sometimes I just want to make something with my hands. I want to make something
that.
tangible with my hands. And so that's where they came from, and playing with patterned paper, and that always gives me new ideas for journaling as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
a lot of
getting
that's
in there and
play.
making stuff, right? Yeah, play and making stuff. That is the name of the game. Oh, I love it. So I have a question for you about how to bring these printable pages into a notebooker's routine. So I mentioned being the type A kind of notebooker, which is I've got my notebook and I write in it and I vary what I write and I do lots of things in my notebook, but it's not very creative, which is why I love your printable pages. And I'm wondering what you recommend for people who want to bring in these guided journal pages into their notebooking. Do we print the pages and we cut them out to fit a notebook that we already have? Do we print them on sticker paper and stick it right in there to replace our page? Or do we go disc bound? Do we print them out on really nice, wonderful thick paper and bind them up? I guess I'm wondering what you recommend for how to bring these pages into either a new or existing notebooking and journaling habit.
So I use those pages as well. I use them all the time. And I keep it really simple. I have a craft binder. So the craft paper, the kind of
Yep.
parcel paper
Yep.
binder that my mom gave me a long time ago that I just love. It's simple and it feels homemade. I just love it. And so I keep those pages chronologic, like reverse chronologically. So the most recent on top, going down, I keep them in a binder. I've experimented with all sorts of different ways of playing with my pages. So you can cut out so most of my pages, if you haven't seen them before, have a prompt and then a box that you can write in, or a prompt and then some lines that you can write on. So you can just cut out the ones that speak to you and attach those in any way you like into your notebook. So you could use the colorful washi tapes to put them in there. You
Ooh,
could.
I haven't done that. I am
Oh,
totally, did
I
I
do
not
that.
think of that? I'm writing that down. I have just been using sticker paper and sticking them, but washi paper is way more fun. Oh, okay. There we go.
I also love the rolls of tape. So it's a roll of so it's like a dry glue. It's kind of in between a tape and a glue, and you can roll it on the back of something and it sticks it to the page. So you can do that. You could mix and match from different pages, which I think would be like, that's
Yeah,
taking it outside. That
that
I think
is.
what I would love is to take the pages and do something creative, like do something new with them. Maybe do something almost a little, you know, I get I don't know what the right word is, but yes, like mix and match. Uh, do something that maybe what isn't intended from
Right,
the pages.
right.
Um, so what I have in my own journal practice is I actually have two journals. So I have what I call like a working journal. It's a notebook, and I write in it in pencil in point form. It's where I keep my to-do lists. I keep my when I'm reading, I keep my reading notes in there as well. Any quotes that I find that I love. I do my problem solving in there. I create prompts in there. It's kind of an everything all at once journal, which I love because it means there are no limits. I can put anything in there that I want, and I mark it up with sticking with post-its around the edges. So if there's parts that I
Yes.
want to keep in mind, I do that. And then I also, and that's also always dated and in chronological order. And then I also have kind of a companion binder, which is full of the journal pages that I'm working through and working on. And I keep those as well. So I kind of keep them in two different places. And the binder with the journal pages is super colorful. I write all over the pages. I try, even in my own journal pages, I try and explore kind of what the limits of the journal pages are. How can I go beyond the limits? So for example, one thing I've been doing recently is in my own journal pages is, and I don't have a spot for this in any of my pages, but maybe I will add it, is at the bottom of the page, I add my takeaway. So I do the whole page and then I read back over the page. And then I'm like, what is my takeaway from this page? Like, what's one thought I want to take with me today from this page that's encouraging or supportive or helps me move forward? So it's really about exploration.
Yeah.
That's how my journaling works, and about not having any boundaries on that or any limits on that, feeling very unlimited in what I can accomplish in my journal. So that's how I do it. I don't did I answer your question?
Yes. Yes, you did. Because now there's lots of options, right? We can cut it out and put it in there. We've got stickers, we've got washi tape, we can mix and match. It is definitely something that I've wondered about, and I know many others do too. So I'm really glad to have those options. You said one thing that made like my heart burst open, because this is my happy place, is talking about reading and books, right? And
Okay.
I love journaling about the books I've read, because I truly believe in the power of bibliotherapy, that books
Yeah.
can teach us. And if we pay attention, if we look for those lessons, if we pull out those quotes or those themes or the things that are making us think, whether that's in a happy way or a jealous way or an anxious way, that there's something we can learn from that. So I love that you talked about journaling, about your reading life. And now here's where my mind's going. My mind's like, hey, Christie, I think you need a page, maybe in the shape of a cute book with a heart. I'm visioning a page for you in the future that would be a really fun way to pull those really important pieces from our reading life, because they always end up in my journal. I feel like my reading
Yeah.
life informs my writing life, and vice
Okay.
versa. So I was really excited to see that you're doing the same thing in that one big giant notebook that you have. So yeah, putting a bug in your ear for your next
We'll write that
project
down.
on your board.
I'm totally going to write that down. Well, yes.
And I'll
Looking for
remind
new
you.
ideas.
Don't
Yes,
worry,
please
because I
do.
know you do those collaborations with
Yes.
others. And so I thought, oh, yes, I've got to put that bug in your ear. Don't worry, if you don't write it down, I'll email you.
Oh, I love collaboration would be wonderful. I
That
think
would
that's
be fun.
yeah. Yeah, I would
Awesome.
love to do that.
So do you have, before we wrap up, any little last nuggets of journaling advice for listeners who either want to make journaling a new habit, or just want to keep the habit going, or push the boundaries? Any things you want to share?
I think that's the thing to remember about your journal, is that it is a judgment-free zone.
Love that.
A judgment-free, guilt-free, no rules zone. So you can write with any implement, you can paint in it, you can write in it, you can use markers, a pencil, a pen, whatever works for you, any format. I know for some people that's a bit too wide open. They want some direction about journaling. So I think that's one of the things, that one of the reasons that I put my prompts out there too, is that it could be that the prompt, a journal, a thoughtful journal prompt can be a place to start. And I think journalists will be surprised how quickly their own thought processes jump in to expand the experience. And another thought I have is, if you can't find the words in your journal, you can use other people's words. You could, what we were saying, you can put down a quote that's really meaningful to you. And the way to journal about that is to then reflect on it. So, if your words aren't, if you don't have the words, put down a quote that's, you could write into your journal a quote that's meaningful, and then follow up with, why is that meaningful to you? My big thing is one thing, right? So one thing about that quote that's meaningful to you. um, one part of the quote that's meaningful, and then one reason why it's meaningful, one way it inspires you, that sort of thing. And that, to delve a little bit into your own thinking, to kind of activate your own voice. So, and just to remember that your journal isn't going to judge what you write. You can write whatever needs to be written there. And it can be, there are so many things, there are so many ways to start. You could engage your senses, right? This is a really common journal prompt, but one thing you can see, like right now, like this is my thing about journaling too, is like right now you can just start right here, right now. Start where you are. So one thing you can see, one thing you can hear, one thing you can smell. Another thing I like is, so one thing you can see around, maybe when you look up, when you look down, when you look left, when you look right. But then I always finish with when you close your eyes, one thing you can see. And that's kind of a way to engage your imagination. So there's like, and the key to journaling too is those perspectives, right? Like how to bring lots of different perspectives into your journal, because there are so many insights in those different perspectives. And it reminds you, I remember in your email, you asked me about lists and why list. And that's another place you can start. You can start with lists. My journal is full of lists because they are accessible. It's really easy. It doesn't require any back. It doesn't require any homework. It doesn't require you to prepare in any way. You can just make a list, and it can just be one word lists. But what a list can do is remind you can give you kind of the depth and breadth of an idea that you're examining, but it can also remind you that there are lots of different ways to look at it. And what I love about journaling too is, when we're stuck, journaling from different perspectives can remind us there's lots of different ways to look at a problem and to solve a problem and to look at an experience. There might be something negative in the experience, but there are a lot of positives you can take from it as well.
Yeah. And speaking of that page, it's funny that you mentioned that one, because that page, when you sent it out to your email list of journaling fans, you said that was a page that, didn't go as planned, or I can't remember the exact wording you used. And it's actually one of my favorites, because it is about listing your favorites using the letters of the alphabet, which is what we used inside my Get Literate community when I shared it. So, that's kind of a full circle, that journaling is not perfect. And the idea is that even, no matter what goes on the page, we can learn from it. And I think that's a really great piece of advice, because for those of us that are perfectionists or are afraid to get started, there is no wrong way. There is no wrong way. And as you said right in the very beginning, it's just half the fun is figuring it out of what's going to work for you, which is, half the fun is getting there, right? Isn't that remember, I had that phrase, like Care Bear suitcase as a kid. Half the fun is getting there.
It's an adventure. It's always an adventure. And I always when I'm nervous about something, I say, well, at least it'll be an adventure.
Yes.
And I think we can find little adventures every day, little bits of not quite knowing what's going to happen next, but being really excited to find out. And journaling is a great support for that.
What another little nugget to end on right there. Oh, I love it. Tell listeners where we can find you so that they can see these pages and just kind of absorb all of the journaling energy you have.
My website is christiezimmer.com, and I spell Christie with a CH and an IE. CH at the beginning and an IE at the end. And I have a newsletter there. I often share ideas that I'm working through. If you're interested in kind of the process of journaling and the ideas behind some of the pages, that's where I share a lot of that, is in my newsletter. So if you want a kind of a sneak peek, I would love to be able to share those with anyone who's interested. And I am always happy to chat. So I have a contact section on my page, and if anyone has any questions about journaling, or any thoughts or comments about their own journal practice, or any successes they want to share, any celebrations of their own journal successes they want to share, I always reply, and I love to chat. So please, be in contact anytime, and I would love to meet. I'm always excited to meet fellow journalers and hear their journal stories.
Oh, well, I can imagine you're going to get an influx in your inbox. This was such a fun, uplifting, energizing conversation around journaling. I'm so grateful that you took the time to just talk all things journaling with me. My brain is spinning with new ideas that I have for my own. And like I said, you can't help but just feel the energy that you have for this, whether it's talking in person or being on your email list. It's such a treat when updates and new pages come through from you. So thank you for all that you're
Oh,
putting out in the world. It's wonderful.
thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Yes.
And I'm sure when I journal about it later, I'm going to have so many new ideas for journal pages. Yeah.
Well, you
Thank
can
you so
always
much.
come back and we can talk about them.
Oh, I would love to.
Thank you so much, Christy.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to join my Patreon community. There, you'll find additional inspiration for your reading and writing lives, like bonus podcast episodes, book calendars, monthly book clubs, notebooking challenges, live events, giveaways, and much more. It's only $5 a month, and you get instant access to all the previous content too. You can learn more at getliterate.co. But one more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish and no bookish community too. Thanks so much for listening.